and it is a cold and wet Saturday afternoon. We have just the outskirts of the tropical storm. I don't remember the name of it. Um, just recently made landfall on North Carolina, I believe. And Ophelia, I just got something popped up on my news feed here. Um, so I guess it'll be making its way up the coast. We shouldn't get, in my area, we shouldn't get much. Um, it's supposed to be winds of like 30, 35 miles an hour throughout the day and into the evening. And steady rain. It hasn't been super bad, but it's chilly. And again, it's windy. Definitely feels like fall. The summer days of the 80s and 90s are over. It's just in the 50s right now. Um, I was out early in the morning in the rain, just about a little before 5 o'clock, and I got in a little over 2.5 miles. Steady walk. My early morning walk um, isn't meant to cover much ground. It isn't meant to um, get the heart rate up too much, although I try to keep a steady pace. I try to keep all my walking at a steady pace. Hey, Duncan, thanks for joining in. But when I'm walking that early, it's still dark. Um, my main goal is just to get out in nature, to listen to the sounds, to see what I can see, and get the heart rate up a little bit, get the blood pumping. I've already done a yoga session. Um, by 5 o'clock, I've already done yoga. I've already done some joint mobility, and then I get in my first walk in the day. It was pretty wet and chilly out there when I did it. And then I did my burpees, 300 reps for my 306 reps for 306 subscribers. Thank you guys very much for subscribing. Whatever reason you've decided to subscribe. Um, let's see. Duncan asks if he is right in saying you're thinking of an easy 2 weeks, feeling more fatigued than usual. Um, it's on my mind. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Um, today was included supposedly in that easy couple weeks, and I ended up doing 226 counts in 20 minutes, which isn't great, but it's not too bad. I mean, I was moving pretty hard, and then I continued over. I knew I wanted to get that 300 reps for the 300 subscribers, and I figured, you know what, I'm on a roll. It's not going to be any easier whenever I do it, and I'm already 220 reps in, so let's go for it. But it all depends on how I feel. It's not so much that I'm more fatigued than usual. It's that I'm doing a little bit more. Um, I'm approaching the end of a yoga teaching certification course, and so I've been doing 3 yoga sessions a day, and one of them being pretty hard with a lot of back bends, a lot of extra shoulder stuff thrown in, and so usually my yoga helps my recovery, but when it's this much and with one of them being fairly intense, it's had the opposite effect. It's actually cut into my recovery time just a bit. But, you know, even at 58, not to toot my own horn, but I bounced back fairly quickly, and hopefully I will. What I want to do is basically take it session by session. If I feel I need to take an easy session, I will. Yesterday I did that 12-minute inspired by Richard Runs Trails, the 12-minute drill set, and I really enjoyed that. So tomorrow, what I'm thinking, instead of a 20-minute Navy SEAL session, I might do a 12-minute SEAL drill session, 5 to 6 reps a minute, and maybe follow it with some dips. But again, I'll see how I feel at each session. I've actually considered ending the streak, although honestly, I talk about it as a streak, but I'm not actually. I don't actually take it as a streak. If I need a day off, I'll take a day off. I just generally feel better doing something every day, mentally, emotionally, physically. I just always feel better. So, yeah, 306 subscribers, and Destiny Walks Forever, PhD was a big help, and Richard Runs Trails was a big help, as well as Chris Trauma and the Jay Jordan shared a bunch of my stuff. Duncan, you put my name out there quite a few times. So all the guys in the burpee, when I say guys and girls in the burpee community, just huge help. Very much appreciated for all that you've done. I've been talking a little bit lately where I want the channel to go. I'm actually thinking of it as a channel now, as before it was just me putzing around on YouTube. It's still me putzing around on YouTube, but I'm actually thinking of directions, creative area that I want to explore. And that's what it's all about. From burpees to the YouTube talks to Instagram to Facebook to my writing. It's all based on creativity. Whatever I do, I try to make it into a creative expression of who I am. Every conversation I have here, every morning, whatever I write on my blog, the talks that I'm doing here, the burpees, all of it, the only objective is to be inspired and be creative. In that regard, I was about to say that with varying degrees of success. But when you are being authentic, when you're being creative, when you're inspired, there's no varying degrees of success. That's success right there. Can't be measured on how many views you get. It's not measured by how many props someone gives you. It's not measured by how many thumbs up you get. The measurement is, the value is doing it every day. Whatever it is that you're doing. That if your objective is to be creative and authentic, how can you fail as long as you are creative and authentic? Doesn't mean everything is going to be this grand expression of beauty, unity consciousness, of groundbreaking insights. It means that this moment, this is the creative content of who and what I am. And here it is. Let's see, Duncan says, so a title such as Don't Feel Good, but Here We Go Again, for example, almost impossible to find. No, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say almost impossible. I believe I've had titles like that before. But you know what you won't find is me saying, well, I wish I hadn't done that, because I can't think of an occasion when I didn't feel better afterwards. In almost everything. From running, I can't ever think coming in from a run and saying, man, I wish I hadn't done that. Doing a session of burpees and saying, well, that was a pretty stupid thing to do. So, I don't know. Let's see. Duncan says, so a book review should have the book title in the title of the video, as well as the word review. I agree. You know, Duncan says here, I really mean in terms of YouTube optimization and keywords. You mentioned that before, using hashtags, and it's probably really good advice. The problem is I am extremely technical deficient, and I know how to put a hashtag up. I don't know what makes a hashtag more successful than any other hashtag. Or really, I've had people uh, read my blog and say, "You really, if you had the right keyword, whatever you've written here could go viral." And my first two thoughts were, "What's a keyword, and what does it mean to go viral?" So, um, let's see. Duncan says not hashtags. Um, right, and I guess there's a difference between a hashtag and a keyword. I know that I put in a key phrase in my blog. Let's see, Duncan says just the key terms that are relevant to the video. And on my blog, there's space to put one key term, and I usually just use the title. I don't know if that's a proper thing. Now, on my blog, there's a face, little animated face, and when I click all the buttons, the face turns from an angry red frowny face to a yellow sort of smiling face to a green very happy two thumbs up face. And I can generally get the green face, but I have no idea how I do it. I just keep putting stuff in until I get that face. So yes, I've exposed myself as being technically deficient. Technically deficient, but halfway decent at burpees, and a fairly decent ultra runner. So I pick my battles. I should learn more. Honestly, man, my mind glazes over when I start reading technical stuff, especially technical stuff about computers. I know how to get my computer on, and I know how to get the stuff that I want. I know how to reboot it for 30 seconds when it doesn't seem to be working properly. And after that, I've used up all of my technical expertise. I used to tell Mocha that I am geared to be a hunter-gatherer. I will defend you. I will lift heavy things and carry them for you. I will gather food for you. If I absolutely had to, I would hunt. Outside of that realm, everything else, you're basically on your own. She accepted that pretty much. So as far as, that's the weird thing, as far as content, I have no plans for this channel other than doing burpees and then coming here and having a conversation with you guys about whatever it is that's on my mind. And that's normally meditation and yoga and breath work, other fitness stuff, talking about writing, talking about inspiration. Duncan is giving me some great advice. If you were discussing a famous philosopher, for example, put their name in the title of your video. Okay. That I can not only do, but I can remember. The problem is I talk so much on these videos, and it's so stream of conscious. I sometimes struggle for a title because really it's all over the place, and I don't remember a third of what I say. Everything. That's why I liken it, when I liken a conversation to art, which it is. There's an art form for a conversation, even if it isn't a typical art that we think of. And even if it's just a conversation, me looking at a camera and talking to whoever. Although I appreciate it when my friends like Duncan come along and prompt me along, and I get to have this back and forth with them. But if I liken it to an art form, then it is Jackson Pollock abstract expressionism. There's no theme, there's no lasting theme from start to finish. I seldom come with a subject and stay on that subject without veering off into 1,000 other directions, which is part of the authenticity, because that's just how my mind works. Although it can be one focus, which is an um, important thing to cultivate, especially in yoga. It's literally one of the 8 limbs of yoga, which is always an important thing for me to talk about, the 8 limbs of yoga. And I have been discovering the first 2 limbs of yoga, yamas and the niyamas. Yamas are considered, there's 5 of each. Yamas are considered restraints, things that we don't do, things that we restrain ourselves from doing in order to cultivate a positive attribute. In Western therapy, what is it called? Negative via. I can't remember. I could look it up, but I don't feel like messing with the computer. It's in terms of using a negative expression in order to achieve a positive result. And I've talked about this quite a bit. The first yama being ahimsa, which is non-harming, and how we take that on a deeper level, that we can't just say non-harming in terms of thinking of pacifism or non-violence, because it's so much deeper than that. Non-harming means as well not harming ourselves, and that goes as basic as the very thoughts that we think. If we have negative thoughts about ourselves, that's harmful. So we're not practicing that first yama. The important thing is that realization, because then we start to pay attention to our mind. We start to pay attention to what we're thinking, how we're thinking it, how we're expressing it, how we're expressing it out loud in a conversation. Or every other word out of our mouth, negative, pessimistic, that's not necessarily bad, but does it bring us the results that we want? When we start thinking about non-harm, we sort of move seamlessly into another one of the yamas, which is non-lying. Now, of course, you can express these in more positive terms. Instead of the restraints, non-lying, truth-telling, but it amounts to the same thing. However, when we say truth-telling, then we can sort of be selective in the truth that we tell. Well, I'll tell this truth, this truth, and we let ourselves off the hook with a few little white lies here and there. So when we say non-lying, everything we express is going to be the truth by virtue of the fact that we're not lying to ourselves or towards other people. Most importantly, not to ourselves. Think of how many little lies we excuse ourselves of. Think about when we support a politician who does some things that we don't agree with. We're lying to ourselves. Especially in terms of spiritual principles, religious principles. If they do not support our ideal of what we believe a leader should be, and yet we support them because, who knows why, because we believe that they have these singular policies that might get done, but we disagree with everything else we disagree with the type of person that they are, then we're lying to ourselves. When we cease lying to ourselves, things get very quiet internally, interior silence. And in that silence, we become the witness to our minds, witness to our thoughts, the witness to the things that we say, more importantly, the things that we think. I keep quoting Emerson here. Ancestor of every action is a thought. So when we start examining those thoughts through that interior science, through the habit of not lying, I put that restraint. If I'm going to say it, it's going to be true. Otherwise, I won't say it. So I put that restraint there. Again, the yamas being called the 5 restraints. Then my actions reflect that. My actions will be based upon truthfulness. So there you see how all of those restraints bring our lives into harmony. Balance, balancing. We have a tendency to say balanced, but we'd be hard pressed to find anything that's balanced. What we find is that everything is in a fine state of balancing, swinging this way, swinging that way. Sometimes wildly, sometimes teetering. The point is, though, it's always in motion. When we think of balance, we think of something still, perfectly in tune, perfectly balanced. Life doesn't seem to work that way. Life seems to be in work. Life seems to work in terms of balancing fluidity, motion. And then when we can get in tune with that, we don't have to worry about being in balance because we know that we are moving along at the clip that we're supposed to be moving along at. It is what it is here. Lewis, how are you? Is your team playing tomorrow? By team, I can only mean one thing for anyone who ever watches this. You'll know automatically by team. And Lewis, it is what it is. The Raiders. I was going to say on this channel, the only team that matters right now are the Raiders, which I can easily say because, I got a friend here who's a Raiders fan. I don't know. I don't talk football literally with anyone else but Lewis. So that automatically makes me a Raiders fan to support my friend. However, I'm a fair weather Baltimore Orioles fan, being I'm like 15 miles away from Baltimore. And the Orioles are in the playoffs, I think for the first time, but 15 years or something like that. I ignore them the rest of the time. I haven't been to an Orioles game in 30 years. Used to go with my dad as a kid. I went with a couple friends every once in a while. I got drunk. It caused trouble. That's what I did wherever I went. So for me, a baseball game was an outside bar where people played baseball versus an inside bar where I heard music, occasionally got in a fight. So that tells you two things. One, in the 90s, I was a bit of an asshole and drank too much. And two, I'm not really a baseball fan one way or the other, but I will support my home team since they're making it. And I'll tell you what, I'll make a promise right here. If I have to choose between the Baltimore Ravens in football and the Raiders, I will choose the Raiders. It's on tape. Well, I guess it's not on tape. It's on film. Posted on YouTube, live. Anyone who watches this has heard me say that. I will support the Raiders, or I will support the Raiders over the Ravens. But one, the Ravens don't. I'm going to get a lot of flack from this if any of my local friends see this. They generally ignore me. They generally ignore me on YouTube. in person or on Facebook, great relationship. But outside of that, they ignore the stuff that I do. They knew that I do weird shit all the time. So, you know, they've conditioned themselves to ignore the things I do, the things I say. Good naturedly, of course. That's just Eric doing weird shit. But I will say, and again, I'll catch some grief, the Ravens don't belong in Baltimore. The Baltimore Colts belonged in Baltimore. And they were taken from our hometown in the middle of the night, U-Haul trucks, moving out of Baltimore it was a foggy morning, I remember. Lost the football team. And then we took the Cleveland Browns. They went, for whatever reason, they left Cleveland, and we said, hey, we'll take you. We'll steal somebody else's team. So it's easy for me to say I'm going to be a Raiders fan because I could care less about the Ravens. Sorry to my friends who love the Ravens, and they do. Baltimore loves their football, and they deserve the football team, but we should have gotten something better. Duncan says he's got some more 5 pumps coming in the next video, and inspired by Lewis, who was the 5 pump master. And Duncan asked if I watch boxing. I haven't in a number of years. I used to. As a matter of fact, in the 70s, one of the reasons why I started training was inspired to be a boxer. It's funny how that inspiration quickly leaves the first time you punch to the nose. However, I did do a little bit of boxing. I did do a little bit of Thai boxing, and I've done a fair share of martial arts, competing in both a few kickboxing tournaments as well as judo, as well as the first ever Washington, D.C., Virginia area Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament. Was not practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I was practicing judo, and I thought it would stand up well against Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it did, not particularly for me, but it did for quite a few other people who went with me to compete. Let's see. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. IFNHU. Ifinu? Ifinu. That sounds pretty nice. You look and sound like a therapist. Very calming. Thank you. I appreciate that. Oddly enough, I'm doing a certification course in yoga psychology. And hopefully that will prove helpful to my friends, to me, and to my friends, to anyone who comes in and watches. Duncan said a good one tonight. Joe Joyce versus Zhang. What is the weight? For some reason, I'm thinking middleweight. Oh, man, I went way off topic. I was talking about boxing. Duncan is asking if I will do any online classes for yoga. I will not. I'm not going to teach yoga asanas as far as classes. This is something often discussed between Mocha and I. He thinks that I should, and I understand why she thinks that. But my goal is to teach all of yoga, not just the asanas, the whole 8 limbs of yoga, and which is why I actually started teaching-wise with meditation, and then I went to pranayama, and then I went to philosophy, and then I went to the asanas. I've practiced the asanas for 40 some years. I'm not the bendiest yogi in the world. I have a routine set up that opens me up energetically. And That's the purpose for me. However, I do want to demonstrate certain poses. I was going to do it today, but with the storm going through, I wasn't able to. Mocha was going to help me film it, but she wasn't able to. I was going to do what's called the easy cow face pose, which is a great stretch for the shoulders and upper back. Mr. Mock likes cheese. And he wants me to give him cheese. You know what? I'm going to apologize to you, because if I were to give you cheese, it would be vegan cheese, which is actually pretty good. I haven't had it myself for probably about 3 years, as I cleaned up my diet almost entirely free of all anything that's not 100% whole food. So, you know, as a vegan, we live in a golden age of vegan junk food. I can eat every bit as much. I can be every bit as unhealthy as any other junk food eater. But, and I found myself sneaking more and more of that in, thinking, well, you know, it's plant-based. I can eat this bag of vegan chips and it's like eating a salad. But of course it isn't. So I cleaned up my diet quite a bit. So it was never that bad. It was just more stuff sneaking in that I shouldn't. And because I was fasting 18 to 20 hours, when I ate a lot, which meant that I put a little more junk to make up some calories than I should. So I got rid of it all. My diet is, I don't fast as long. I fast about 15 hours now, 14 to 15 hours. And which isn't really fasting, but it does give the digestive system a bit of a break. And really, it's all whole grain, lots of oatmeal, a little bit of rice, but not too much. Lots of lentils, lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, and that's about it. You should introduce her to Mr. Mock. That was pretty funny. And Lewis says, nice, Eric, fasting is amazing. It is, and I felt really good fasting 18 to 20 hours, but it was just getting difficult to get as many calories as I needed at that time. So I ended up cutting back on the fasting a bit. And that's actually proven to be helpful. What I need to do, though, is add in 1 day a week of a long fast. Keep up my 14, 15 hour fasting in, and then 1 day a week do something really long. And Lewis says, I'm trying to tell that to my wife. She calls it starving. Yeah. Actually, Mocha fasts fairly often. I think she fasts longer than me. She'll go 16 plus hours. It is what it is, says. I'm like, would you tell that to Jesus? Yeah. Hey, he went off in the desert for 40 days. Not going to find a whole lot of food in the desert for 40 days. My answer to that was always, whenever someone would say, you know, aren't you hungry, or I would be starving, is it's okay to be hungry. Why is it considered a bad thing to be hungry? That we can't not put food in our mouths. You know, I hear that not watching a whole lot of TV. Somebody said, I'd be bored out of my mind. It's okay to be bored. I don't always have to be stimulated by something. I don't always need to be entertained by something. One of the things that I found through writing is when the words aren't there, there's no sense struggling to find them. They'll either come to me or I'll sit here in silence and enjoy it. And eventually, because of that silence, words know exactly where to find me. Our good friend Destiny Forever Walks, PhD, is here. Wishing everyone a grand Saturday and blessings to you, Eric. How are you? I'm doing well. Having a great talk with Lewis, and Duncan was here, and FNU. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And Mr. Mock was here, sharing his love of dairy products, sharing his love of fermented dairy products. Made for an interesting conversation. Actually, he inspired a further conversation between Lewis and I. So I'm always told not to engage with certain people. Mocha always says, you know, they're here just to mess with you. But hey, look, Mr. Mock's love of cheese has inspired a great dietary conversation between Lewis and myself. And now we have Destiny here, and Destiny has awesome nutritional advice on her YouTube channel. If I always mention, if you're subscribed to me and you are not subscribed to some of these other great people, a huge mistake. If you're subscribed to me and you're not subscribed to Destiny Forever Walks, check out her channel and definitely subscribe, because there is, number one, it's an inspiring channel, and number two, not in any particular order, there's a whole lot of useful information that will really help you get your fitness journey straight. FNU. Am I saying that right? You can correct me if I'm wrong. They go to Wisconsin for their honeymoon. Yeah, that's the place to go for cheese. You can also catch the Green Bay Packers. If I had to pick another team outside of the Raiders, which I'm not going to, by the way, maybe it would be Green Bay. Well, actually, you know what? It should be Pittsburgh, because I was actually born in Pittsburgh, or right outside of Pittsburgh, McKeesport, Pennsylvania, which is now one of the most crime-ridden small areas, and definitely in Pennsylvania, but in the United States, sadly. Used to be a nice place. Destiny is saying blessings and love to everyone in the chat. Thank you. And happy Saturday. Don't forget to enjoy the moments each day brings. Excellent advice. Duncan is here. Let's see. So, yeah, so outside of the Raiders, we would have to go to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh and the Raiders they don't exactly see eye to eye. Green Bay, Miami, all those teams are like, not that I know much about them, at least now, but they have that deep history. I mean, Miami Dolphins, the only undefeated team in history, 1972, I believe. An amazing backfield, Bob Griese, Jim Kick, Mark V. Murs, and Larry Zonka. I know more about football history and players than I know about football. I can't tell you rule 1 in football. I know they have rules, but I can't tell you a single one. But I can tell you who the 2 pulling guards were for Green Bay Packers in the 1960s in their first Super Bowl. Fuzzy Thurston, Jerry Kramer. Jerry Kramer, being an absolutely amazing athlete, came from all kinds of setbacks. Actually, was shot in a hunting accident and ended up playing that season, recovering from it. I don't know why that type of trivia stays in my head, but I can't remember what um, what Duncan was telling me. I can't even remember what we were talking about. Keywords, key themes. That leaves my head, but the pulling guard for the Green Bay Packers in 1967 stays in my head. And I don't even watch football. But as a kid, I used to love reading about athletes that inspired me. And these were all of the athletes. Like Al Order. You can look him up on YouTube. He was a shot put. Nope. He was a discus thrower. Sorry. Who I believe won a gold medal in 1956, 1960, 64, 68, possibly 72. He made a comeback in 1980, but did not make the Olympic team. Just as well because they canceled the Olympics, the Summer Olympics in 1980. They did have the Winter Olympics. So maybe the theme of my YouTube channel should be obscure and useless sports trivia that no one remembers or has an interest in at all. And I could probably excel in that. Same with boxing. I could not name a single professional boxer active right now. But I could tell you how much Bob Fitzsimmons weighed. One of the lighter heavyweights in the probably 178 pounds or somewhere around there. No idea why I know this stuff. Or why I at one time had even wanted to know this stuff. But I do. And, at least it makes for interesting YouTube content. Maybe. All right, guys. So I'm coming up on 45 minutes. I'm doing my best to keep things at a tight 30 minutes. I didn't do a very good job today, but I had a great time talking to some new friends and talking about Green Bay, Wisconsin, cheese, veganism, boxing, football. Not a bad conversation. I also got a chance to talk about yoga and the yamas, the 5 restraints. I urge everyone to look up the 5 niyamas, the 5 yamas and the 5 niyamas, because there is magic in what they bring into your life. We look at them and we think this is impossible. 5 restraints: non-harmful, non-lying, non-hoarding, sexual restraint. That's one we definitely need to talk about because it throws everyone off. And there's when you practice them, even a little, there's a definite magic that happens in your life. Definitely calls for a more in-depth conversation, maybe tomorrow. So once again, though, I want to thank everyone for the new subscribers, for the old ones who have been here for some time. Appreciate it all. I appreciate the help. Destiny Forever Walks. I appreciate all that you've done for me. Richard Runs Trails. I appreciate you as well. Chris Trauma, you, Lewis, you all posted. Duncan mentioned me several times on his channel. You all put it out there. So I very much appreciate it. Destiny says, Green Bay Packers. I remember my days with them. Thanks, Eric, for so many conversations with you on the chat. Much to you all. Enjoy your day. You enjoy your day as well. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.